So as Joe and I always say, the left is teeing it up. Today's no exception.
Taking this down, are they not haters?
I think they might be listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe.
Should be.
And once more, dear friends, we are going way into the breach. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Rationalizing. And we got a great conversation for you tonight because there's a lot of nonsense, as always.
And we have made America great again.
Where's the woke media when it comes to that? Our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. Welcome back, everyone, to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Rationalizing. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach Sunday night live at 8 o'clock. And thank you all again for joining us here. Remember, all of you, we're going across about 23 different platforms right now. So wherever you are, if you could support us by liking, sharing, subscribing, sharing it with your friends, whatever you could do would be more than appreciated. I will mention that we do have our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/the Frontline with Joe and Joe, if you want to throw in a couple of bucks. And as always, your prayers are what we are grateful for more than anything else. Joe and I are doing the show every week live at 8 o'clock, and our message is starting to get out there. Our shows are getting are just getting more and more and more and more views as we go along. A lot of people are listening to us. We're getting people from all over the world. We have people from Australia, from Ireland, from the Philippines, obviously the United States, obviously Canada, all over the place. Why? Because you can't hold down the truth. You can't. In other words, and what we're doing here is we're shedding the light of truth on all the nonsense out there. Because out there right now, and the title of this talk is "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil." And we're going to talk about that a little bit, all right? And Joe's going to bring up a great article recently that was written about that. And we're going to give you some examples of those who call evil good. And you're going to understand how, when we look at all these things, don't think of it as politics, culture, and religion. It's all together. It's all a spiritual battle. That's what we are engaged in. So let's get that straight. So whether you're talking about politics or culture, when someone's lying, when someone is trying to spread darkness, it's our job to shed the light of truth on it, first and foremost, by opening our mouths. The greatest revolutionary act you could do right now is when you see evil, when you see a lie, open your mouth. That's why we're here. So thanks again. I'm going to kick it over to Joe, and let's get rocking. A lot to talk about.
So as Joe said, we're gonna get started by getting a little biblical. We're gonna go to the prophet Isaiah.
We're going a little Old Testament on you folks.
We're gonna go the prophet Isaiah. We'll begin with the Old Testament, as Joe said. He warned the Hebrews, "Woe to you who call evil good and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who exchange the bitter for sweet and the sweet for bitter." People today have an instantaneous access to almost limitless information. A feature of the information age, an unequaled, basically access in the history of the world. I mean, when have you ever been able to, as a human being, to press a button and get information? You had to go to a library and talk to the Dewey Decimal expert to find information. Go through microfiche. You go to Google. You find out anything.
Here you go with that word microfiche again. I have bad memories of microfiche.
So do I. But despite that, and this is the point I'm making, many people are befuddled regarding political, social, and moral matters, especially religious matters. Sister Lucia, basically, she was one of the surviving seers of Fatima. This is from 1917. Had important things to say about this modern confusion. What she called it was diabolical disorientation.
And that's exactly what it is.
And she wrote a letter in 1971 to her nephew. And this is what she said. She said, "I see by your letter that you are preoccupied by the disorientation of our time. It is indeed sad that so many persons let themselves be dominated by the diabolical waves sweeping over the world, and that they are blinded to the point of being incapable of seeing error. See, G.K. Chesterton said this. He was an academic from England. He said, when you disregard God, you lose your common sense. This is very true. There are many people who have no education, no formal education, that see, that are wise, that have common sense. And there are many people that are highly educated that do not. You notice in the Bible, like St. Paul, he became blind when he met Christ, right? For 3 days, symbolic of Christ going into the tomb for 3 days, obviously. But also the blindness, he led a life that was going in one direction. He becomes blind and then he sees. You see, sin blinds us. We have an amoral culture. Why are we shocked that we have amoral leaders? We have an amoral culture.
Right.
I mean, we shouldn't be shocked.
And it's a culture that, and we're going to talk about a few of these characters. Well, one in particular, a couple in particular we want to talk about. But just look at who's sitting in the Oval Office. He's called a good man. I'm not judging whether or not he's good to his wife or he's good to his kids. Okay, or maybe he feeds a few poor people. But he's called a good man, and the elephant in the room is he supports baby slaughter.
Up to the day of birth.
Up to the day of birth. He signed that. Or he wants to codify Roe versus Wade, and his position is you could kill a baby up to the day of birth, and he's called a good man. Good man. Woe to you who call evil good and good evil. And why do they do that? Because of the diabolical disorientation that Sister Lucia was talking about. Okay? They actually think abortion is a good thing. Chelsea Clinton last year said, well, you know, since Roe versus Wade, about $3.5 trillion has been added to our economy. Whether or not that's true, which I highly doubt, because I don't think Chelsea Clinton knows how to do math. Okay, but let's assume that's true. What does that mean? Baby killing's okay because our economy grew by an additional $3.5 trillion over 50 years? This is what Joe's talking about. This is what he's bringing up in this article. We call evil good and good evil. If you fight against abortion, you're evil. You're a bad person.
And many of these people are sincere. You see, this is the thing. St. Paul was sincere. He was I'm bringing him up because I watched the movie with Caviezel this weekend, actually. He was sincere. He was a Jew. He was educated, and he persecuted Christians. He was sincere, but he was sincerely wrong. And then he saw. Okay, it's very symbolic. He went blind and then he saw. Sin blinds you. If our country, particularly our Catholic population, went to confession, they would see. If Joe Biden had a sincere confession with a good confessor, he would see. God then opens our eyes. You see, people confuse sight with intelligence. You could be very smart and be very blind.
And be blind as a bat.
Be very blind. You know, it doesn't correlate.
Right.
And this is what it is. People don't go to confession. Again, our society, this is Catholics. Only 30%. We had a great interview this weekend with Mike Aquilina and Brandon McGinley. We were talking about adoration. We're talking about a Lenten course that the St. Paul Center in Steubenville is offering for free. You should take it. But speaking on that, we're just talking about, you know, just because you're smart doesn't mean you see things. And I'm telling you, people have to go to confession. I bring this up because only 30% of our Catholic population that goes to Mass believes in the true presence. They don't see.
I want to mention John Boy's in the chat room. He said, I was blind for decades. Join the club, John. I'm with you on that, brother. But again, it shows you the mercy of God. Okay. When, as Joe says, when one accepts God's mercy and goes to confession, John Boy, all right, and gets rid of their sins and gives them to Christ, who wants to take them from you, all right, and clean you, all right, then your eyes are open. Okay, then you could see the world clearly. So yes, we always point out people who do some pretty evil things. I fall short. We don't want to call people evil, but people have embraced evil. That's the difference. No human being on this planet is pure evil. Nobody's pure evil because all human beings are created by God. God doesn't create evil human beings. We choose evil. And the people we're talking about are blinded because they've embraced that very evil. And particularly, come on, let's face it, in our culture, central to the evil is baby slaughter. There are many things that go on in this culture, okay? Many things that we could look at and say, well, that's pretty sick. That's pretty evil. And again, there's people that try to tell you that, no, that's a good thing, like gay marriage. Oh, that's a good thing. Okay, that represents tolerance and love and all that, compassion and all that nonsense. Okay, no, it's not a good thing. Okay, I'm not. And again, John Boy, the idea is that these people are blind because they refuse to bend the knee. So they're blinded by their sin, then they fall deeper into sin, and only God and maybe a good word from an evangelizing person, a good priest or somebody like Joe and Joe, maybe gets through to somebody and they say, you know, something, I need to rethink my position on this, that, or take abortion or gay marriage or many other things. Okay. And then they go to confession and they open their eyes. The scales fall from their eyes. So I want to bring this up to you, John Boy, to say, you know, I was with you, blind for at least 2 decades of my life, maybe a little bit more than that. But again, God's got a way of opening your eyes. But we can't allow what we cannot allow. Me, Joe, and everybody else out there, we can't allow evil to be called good and good to be called evil. We cannot do that. That's what we're fighting against. Like St. Paul, Joe brought up St. Paul. St. Paul also said, you know, we fight not against flesh and blood. We fight against spiritual wickedness in high places. That spiritual wickedness, those are the people that call good evil and evil good. That's what we fight against. And that's why one of the main reasons we do this show is to tell them, we know you're lying, and we're going to keep telling everybody you're lying because what you're proposing is evil, and we're not going to tolerate that.
And Sister Lucia, she gives a solution, and this show is about solution. This is one of her solutions she gave to a friend talking about diabolical disorientation, which we're seeing today. She brought this up in 1971, but it continues to this very day. She said, people must recite the rosary every day. Our Lady repeated this in all her apparitions, as if to arm us in advance against these times of diabolical disorientation, so that we would not let ourselves be fooled by false doctrines, and that through prayer and elevation of our souls to God would not be diminished. Our Lady teaches us. When we pray the rosary, it's like sitting on the lap of our mother when we're a child. She teaches us through the rosary, meditating on the scriptures, confession, going to receive the Eucharist, which is viaticum, food for the journey in a state of grace. This is how you see through the fog. I'm telling you this right now. And those who don't see. And it has nothing to do with your smarts. It has, I'll say that again. It has nothing to do with your smarts. You know, the gifts of the Holy Spirit, there are 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit, one of which is wisdom. It comes with the grace of the sacraments. The sacraments are real. This is real. That's why I'm Catholic. I'm sure as heck not Catholic because of the management. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, not a big fan of management right now.
I mean,
we love the product, but we don't like management too much.
I'm just being honest with you. I'm Catholic because of the sacraments. So this is the truth. I'm telling you this right now. What did Christ say in Scripture? He said, if you do not eat the flesh of the Son of Man, you have no life within you. This is Jesus talking. It's not me. Do you think he's lying? This is what he's talking about. How do people think about this for a second? I always bring this up because it's amazing, actually. Joan of Arc. You want to read one book from Mark Twain. He wrote a book on Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc was illiterate. She was literate. She could not write. When she had to, basically, they tried to get her for heresy, the bishops and basically the powers of France after she basically conquered England for them. She wrote her name with an X. She stood in front of all educated men in the church and never once did she say a heretical thing. How is that possible? Because she was in the state of grace. Mm-hmm. She was in a state of grace. These people were 1 billion times smarter than her. She was illiterate. How is that possible? That's what this is saying. It's saying if you're in a state of grace, if you're praying the rosary, if you're going to confession, if you're receiving the sacrament regularly, you have to receive it obviously once a week because going to Mass is mandatory if you're a Catholic, you will see
Right.
It's that simple.
It is. And your diabolical disorientation. Well, we might not have diabolical disorientation, but we could be disoriented when we're away from the sacraments, away from grace. We could become disoriented. Okay. Or a little bit confused, maybe a little bit weary, whatever the case might be. That's why what Joe's saying is so important. And we say all the time on the show is that the necessity of the sacraments helps us. It's indispensable. It's not just that it helps us. It's indispensable. It's like going into a war without a machine gun. Okay. You're not going to get very far. So you better be armed. And this is a war. Like, make no mistake about it. Again, it manifested. What we're talking about, this evil that's being called good, and vice versa, is manifesting itself in our political battles, in our cultural battles. Okay, that's how we see it. But if you're blind, you're not going to be able to see what's right and what's wrong. You're going to be easily duped by those who would lie to you, particularly the father of lies, who is Satan and the devil. Okay, according to Scripture, the father of lies and the murderer from the beginning. That's why, what do you think we're dealing with? We're dealing with lies. This country is nothing but lies. Our government doesn't do anything but lie. Our politicians don't do anything but lie. And we have state-sponsored, paid-for murder, baby murder in this country. So the father of lies and the murderer from the beginning is having a really great time in America right now. That's why this article and talking like this is important, so that we can identify what is evil and fearlessly do so. Because when you do it, then they tell you, we'll cost you your job. In other words, we'll take away your ability to put food on the table. And don't think that that's not going to happen. It's already happening. People are getting canceled and doxxed all over the place. Okay? Doesn't matter. We have to trust in Christ, and we have to keep moving forward. And don't let them tell you that something is good when you know that it's not. And when others are duped by these lies, it's our job to enlighten them also. Okay. So really, really important that we keep that in mind.
So let's talk about the Biden administration. And
I don't want to talk about it. All right, listen, we're going to shut the show. I don't want to talk about the Biden. No. But you're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. And you're probably watching us either on YouTube or Facebook right now, but we're on a number of different platforms, and we're going to start getting used to being on a number of different platforms. Okay, this way we don't get shut down or banned or whatever the case might be. But right now we'll keep it within YouTube limits, so we don't get the chop. Okay, and please like, subscribe, and share. Do all that fun stuff. Go ahead, Joe.
Becerra, as in Xavier Becerra, is a menace to life and liberty, says Bill Donahue of the Catholic League. Joe Biden's worst nominee for a cabinet post is Xavier Becerra. Remember that.
This guy is,
and he's Catholic.
Which
he's baptized Catholic.
Just makes my stomach turn. Okay, and Joe's going to tell you why, and we're both going to tell you why. This guy is not Catholic. Joe Biden might be old. Okay, he might have an excuse. I'm not saying he does. Okay. He's borderline dementia. He's going to be out of office soon. I don't care what anybody says.
This dude's like possessed.
And he's just Becerra is an evil man. No, wait, we just said we're not going to say that. Becerra has embraced evil to the point where he lives in utter darkness. His blindness is as thick as the thickest, darkest night. That's how blind he is.
I read a little bit about his background because, just doing research. I'm going to get back into the story a little bit just to give you a little background on him. He's basically, like he's a child of Mexican immigrants. He grew up in Sacramento, California. I think him and his sisters, it's either 2 or 3 sisters. Please forgive me if it's definitely 2 or 3, but in a one bedroom apartment, they shared a bedroom, all his siblings. He went to Stanford. So he came from a very poor background. He went to Stanford, and then he went to studied economics, and then he went to Stanford Law School. So I'm assuming his parents, they're Mexican-American Catholic. Here's a guy, grows up poor, gifted, and then he turns into this. Clearly influenced by the liberal academic state at Stanford, influenced by his peers, embraced it fully. And this is what you do with such gifts? This is a gifted man who came from nothing.
And his primary focus, like they accuse us of being one-issue voters. His primary focus is abortion. Like right up to the moment of birth, even after the baby is born. If you try to expose the abortion industry, he's going to prosecute you. We'll talk about that in a second too. Okay. He wants it paid for. He wants you to pay for it. Another guy who thinks the Catholic Church needs to get its tax exempt status taken away because it's a hate group, because we don't approve of gay marriage. This guy is off the deep end. Like I said, the thickness of his blindness is thicker than Mount Everest. Okay, this is not a good dude, and he calls evil good and good evil, and we're going to tell you why.
And someone in the chat room asked, "What cabinet?" He's basically
he's the head of the HHS, and he's got zero experience.
He's not a
in
doctor.
healthcare. Zero. Now get this straight, everybody out there. He's got zero experience in healthcare. Biden made him, the people controlling Biden made him the head of the HHS. Why? Because it's through the HHS that this vicious anti-Catholic is going to go after the Catholic Church. Let's get it straight. By hobbling together as much of Obamacare back as they could, okay, defying the Supreme Court that ruled in favor of the Little Sisters of the Poor twice. Right? This is the pit bull that Biden and his handlers are sending after the Catholic Church. That's why he's the head of HHS.
So let's look at some of the reasons why Becerra is basically, if you ask me, an utter disaster. It would be impossible to find a more enthusiastic advocate for abortion than him. Becerra's lust for abortion even allows him to support partial birth abortions. As a congressman, he voted against a bill that would criminalize the killing of an unborn child during the commission of another crime. What the hell is that? What the hell is that? When he was in Congress.
Well, remember something real quick. All the feminist groups and all big abortion with the Scott Peterson case, because I believe he was convicted of two murders.
That's
okay,
why, probably.
And they didn't want. They were fighting desperately to have him convicted of one murder, the murder of his wife, because they didn't want the court to acknowledge that he murdered a baby in the womb. He murdered their baby in the womb.
Well, that's a dangerous precedent. You see, that type of precedent can be thrown up against Roe v. Wade.
Well, right, but that's why they were fighting. So
but
very.
Is that for women?
But this right.
I mean, you're going to tell me with a straight face you're pro-woman, that a woman who's murdered, that's 7 months pregnant, 8 months pregnant, you're pro-woman by saying that child doesn't count? Please spare me.
Right, but as a congressman, like Joe said, he was against legislation that would have recognized that baby as a human being.
Also, when he was in Congress, he approved of human cloning for research purposes. When he was
By the way, intrinsic evil, according to the Catholic Church.
Absolutely.
Cloning is an intrinsic evil.
Absolutely. When he was the Attorney General of California, his strongest support for he was the strongest support for doctor-assisted suicide. And that won him a lot of kudos with the radical left.
Because he's a radical leftist.
And lastly, you'll find he's basically few attorney generals in the United States fought more furiously to deny the Little Sisters of the Poor their religious rights.
But but remember, Biden's a unifier.
This dude, there's nothing moderate about him.
No.
He has no place. You see, this is where, I'll be honest with you, people just are asleep at the wheel. They're asleep at the wheel. Everyone who says that Biden's a centralist, he's for the regular guy, this guy is a rabid, radical leftist. Period. End of story. This guy has no place on the federal level.
Right,
There's no place in government.
No, but he belongs there if you have a regime that wants people like him there. Number one, he's Spanish. He's Hispanic. So if you attack him, of course, you're racist. Okay. He just loves everything LGBT. So if you're for traditional marriage,
his undersecretary's a transgender man.
Right. That's the dude from I know we're not supposed to call him a dude, but that's the dude from Pennsylvania, right? That's the assistant, Rachel, forgot the last name. Anyway, Rachel Levine. I think his original name was Gus. But this is the type of guy. If you're an oligarch, if you're a left-wing oligarch, and you're in this puppet government, okay, with Biden supposedly running things, but he's not. He's a puppet, okay. Then Becerra is exactly the type of guy you want. Becerra is he's your hitman. He's the guy you send out to make things happen. He's got no mercy. Look at the way, again, Everybody out there, rather than say the words Little Sisters of the Poor, should take the time, not during Joe and Joe, afterwards, and go look at pictures of the Little Sisters of the Poor. Go on their website and look at what they do. And imagine this person. I have a different name I was about to call him. I said I wasn't going to do that. So this evil person, Xavier Becerra, a man who has embraced evil, is going after that group of people.
I'll tell you what
the
they
Little
do.
Sisters of the Poor.
They take care of indigent old people. So basically,
no, I'm saying I want people to see pictures of them, and the pictures
they're
of
as
them,
holy as the day is long.
Right.
When John Jagan, who I'm probably mispronouncing her name, but she was the saint that founded the order, I believe Benedict canonized her, Benedict the 16th. He said, "You'll be hard pressed to find a more humble woman." They're humble, hardworking women that take care of poor old people who basically have nowhere else to go at no cost to the government. You see, this is where I sometimes just shake my head. Why screw with these people? Carve out an exception. Listen, if you want to make it mandatory because for some ungodly reason that you have to feel that people can't afford their own birth control,
which is a joke,
which costs nothing anyway, you're going to force people like the Little Sisters of the Poor who take their Catholic faith seriously to pay for the employees that work in their nursing homes for their birth control and abortifacients. Why would you do that? Like, in all honesty, let's talk pure business and pure numbers. All of their centers, probably in the United States, save states millions of dollars. Millions. They're the type of order they'll shut down. They're all over the world. They don't have to be in the United States. They'll shut it down.
But let me ask you this.
Why would you do that?
Well, if you are a committed left-wing oligarch, you have very little time for the Catholic Church. You want the destruction of the Catholic Church. I don't care if you're in the EU. I don't care if you're in America. You want the destruction of the Catholic Church. You've already neutered the church because of all our many, not all, many of our let's call it feckless leaders, okay, who should have been speaking out before November. In other words, and then maybe things would have been a little bit different. So you want the destruction of the Catholic Church, but you can't have any remnants of the Catholic Church. See, whatever they do up here, and we interviewed Mike Aquilina and Brandon McGinley, like Joe said, over the weekend. Mike Aquilina made a good point. When has there been a time when there hasn't been bad bishops? There always will be. There always was. But underneath it, you have the Catholics on the ground, the orders. Okay, you mentioned missionaries of charity all the time, Little Sisters of the Poor, Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, Sisters of Life. These are all good and holy people. They're not interested in money. They're not interested in politics. They want to do the job that Christ has called them to do, and they do it. Those are the people like Becerra and his handlers and his bosses, they're the ones that need to be stomped out. Why? They're the ones that give the witness to the rest of the culture. To try to remind us, let's say in America, we're still Christian in this country, aren't we? We still believe in the sanctity of human life, don't we? We still believe that marriage is between one man and one woman, don't we? And orders like this remind people of that. That's why Becerra and his left-wing oligarch bosses have to put the boot on the face of the Little Sisters of the Poor. Why do you think the Catholic Church is not doing adoptions? Because they're not going to be told that they have to place a child with a same-sex couple. Okay? So guess what? The church isn't doing adoptions. Pretty soon, this is answering your question. Or at least I'm posing a question to you. Do you think that they don't think about these things, like you said, about saving money, how the church saves the state money? Because they don't care.
Well, that's a good point.
Out.
You see, that's a good point. Forget about the church. It's what they do for society. The Little Sisters of the Poor don't discriminate. They don't just take care of Catholics. They take care of anybody. It could be a Jewish person. It could be a Muslim person. It could be an atheist. It doesn't matter because Catholics value life, all people. We take care of everybody. As my mother would say, if the Catholic Church shut down its doors, you would hear the cries across the ocean. Mm-hmm. Fact.
Right.
Fact. So here's the deal. They take care of everybody. What that says, forget about us. You hate us, fine. It says they hate you because they provide a service for people. Do you get it? They provide a service for people at no cost.
Do you think that, let's say, if the state did take on the cost of setting up
they would
systems
never do it as well,
like the Little Sisters do you think? Listen, All you have to do is know anything about the Veterans Administration. Okay, guys who got limbs blown off and half a face and everything and survived war, they were treated like crap for decades. That's the same thing that would happen to old people. That's if the government even set something up like that. But what you're going to get is a bunch of people who are going to be unionized, number one. They're not even going to really care about the people that they're supposedly supposed to be caring for. Okay, and those people are going to get treated terribly. Whereas with the Little Sisters of the Poor, what's the first and foremost service they're being provided? Christ's love. That's what they're being provided. Okay, so the government can't do what the Little Sisters of the Poor does, and we don't want them to anyway. I don't want any old person dying in a government building.
Well, the whole idea of the Little Sisters of the Poor is they take care of the person and give them dignity before they die, which all people should be given. But they show them Christ, because here's the deal: if you don't find Christ before you die, my friends, you're not going to heaven. Oh, is that a shocking statement? No, that's a biblical statement. They show you Christ by their actions, so your eyes open. Christ said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. You're getting into heaven through one gate. Christ said that. I am the gate.
Well, think about our friends up at, we always talk about our friends up at the St. Anthony shelter in the Bronx, okay? The Franciscan Friars of Renewal. Now, many men in that shelter, and it's a men's shelter, okay? Many men could easily be in a city shelter, okay? Very easily. But what happens? They're not getting anything in a city shelter, nor do they want to be there. They're not protected.
It's not safe.
It's not safe, okay? It's not a very good environment at all. Other guys might be doing drugs in them, all right? So it's a bad place. What happens at the St. Anthony shelter up there in the Bronx, okay? No drugs, no booze. They get checked before they walk through the door at 6 o'clock at night, before they can settle in and go and get something to eat. They have to make sure they're not high, they're not drunk. They get breathalyzer, okay? And they're in a very, very safe and loving place. And what do? They eat, they pray. They're not out in 20-degree weather. They're sleeping in a bed with a blanket and heat. Okay, they're getting love, the love of Christ, because that's what the friars provide for these men, and they get their lives built back.
And if they want, they change their life.
And that's exactly right. You ain't changing your life in a city shelter. Nothing like that is happening to you in a city shelter. If anything else, you're going to fall deeper into problems.
And that costs you nothing if you're the mayor. You see, this is where people, you talk about calling good evil and evil good. This is where, from a pure business perspective, this is where hatred is in the hearts of these people, because they don't see. Listen, even if I'm agnostic, I'll use this as an example. Jewish folks, we don't agree theologically. I'm friends with Jewish people. I have no problem with you. You're a human being. We just don't agree theologically. If you're doing something good, meaning say you're feeding people, let's just say you have a soup kitchen, I'm going to let you do it if I'm the mayor. Mm-hmm. Why would I stop you from doing that?
Right.
It makes no sense.
It makes zero
sense. I don't
sense.
agree with your. We'll agree to disagree. But if you want to feed people, I'm going to be like, go for it. In fact, I'll applaud you publicly for it.
But that's why I asked you earlier. If your goal is the destruction of the Catholic Church, then they're doing exactly then they're following through on their plan. See, what you're saying makes too much sense.
I guess.
Okay? Joe's making too much sense. But you're not going to walk into Governor Cuomo, let's say, or to Javier Becerra's office and say what Joe just said, because you're going to say, I want to destroy the Little Sisters of the Poor. He might not say it like that, but in his mind, he's like, I want to destroy the Little Sisters of the Poor. I want to destroy the Catholic Church. So I don't really care what you have to say. I'm a left-wing oligarch. This is what I do. This is what I believe. All right, so get out of my office. They don't care, because if they did care, what Joe says should be a very convincing argument, particularly on the math, particularly on the money, because that's all they're about is money.
That's it.
But beyond that, there are some people like Becerra. They're not just about money. They're about calling evil good and good evil. So let's move on in the conversation, because unfortunately, we have more examples for you.
Well, this is an interesting conversation. There's a follow-up to it. Actually, it came out on Friday, but we'll just begin with it. A South Carolina Democrat bucked his party and voted for the heartbeat abortion ban in his state. His name is Russell Ott, and he was one of only 2 Democrats in South Carolina, in the South Carolina House, to vote for the Fetal Heartbeat and Protection from Abortion Act, which restricts abortion after a fetal heartbeat can be detected as early as 6 weeks post-gestation. Okay. Now, this is science now. Science says a baby has a heartbeat at 6 weeks. This is not me. This is science. Now, the House passed the bill. The governor signed it into law. Governor Henry McMaster signed the bill in South Carolina into law. You're going to find out soon why I say that and stress that. I want to tell you what he said during the debate, what the Democrats said. I think it's very important. Joe's going to go nuts. During the legislative debate over the bill, the Democrats walked out of the State House chamber in protest.
Children walk out. Children. Go ahead, Joe.
Democratic leader Todd Rutherford said this during the caucus. People not dying after they're born. We went on to say, we don't believe that life begins when science says it does. He said, calling the vote a farce, that it is about pretend life. Announcing the walkout, Rutherford told the Republicans that his caucus would leave you all to your farce, which is a debate about life. How, Mr. Rutherford, is a heartbeat a farce?
Right.
This is science. You always say you're about the science. Recently there was a senator from Oklahoma that did a talk. I posted it on my Facebook page as well as the Frontline with Joe and Joe Facebook page. You could look at it. He basically just destroyed their science argument that you're going to carry the science through with regard to COVID. Science is saying that there's a heartbeat.
Right.
And you're denying it. That's a farce.
Every time they know they're going to lose, they have to then get ready. What you ought to do, all you good people out there watching the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Okay, real quick though, Stephanie says, "Hey there, Joes." Hey there, Stephanie. I like this. I like the way she put that. Hey there, Joes. When they're about to lose, and I'm going to give you a couple examples. Okay, what you need to do is hit everybody's got live TV now. You can hit the pause button, go make some popcorn, and then sit down, put your feet up, crack a beer if you're a beer drinker, open the scotch if you're a scotch drinker, and sit there and watch the political theater you're about to see. Let me give you an example. Well, Joe just gave you one. So in South Carolina, you guys, this is all a farce. And what do? Rather than vote on it, rather than debate it, what do? Because they know they lost. Not only would they lose the debate, they knew they were going to lose the vote because a bold Democrat stepped up and went against his party. What do? It's all a farce. And then they walk out. Now, that's political theater, okay? When Amy Coney Barrett, and they knew they were going to lose that, okay? If any of you, now you might be able to string these together on YouTube and have a big thing of popcorn, okay? And maybe a fifth of scotch. I'm not encouraging you to drink a fifth of Johnny Walker Black. But when Amy Coney Barrett, when they knew they were going to lose, again, the point of my diatribe is when they know they're going to lose, get ready for political theater. Every senator on the Democrat side, well, they had to stay and vote. So they walked up to the front rather than from their seat, rather than saying, no. Like I remember when fat, ugly Barbara Mikulski in the 90s, when her name came up in the Clarence Thomas vote, Senator Mikulski, no. She's like a big fat troll. Never liked her. But she did it from her seat, okay? These guys during the Amy Coney Barrett, when they knew they lose, they walk up to the front, right in front of in front of the Senate, and they were going like this, like little girls, like this, like no, Menendez went up like this. Now that's our beloved senator from New Jersey,
Catholic,
another disgraziad Catholic, Robert Menendez. Now they put their thumbs down like this. They're little girls, and I'm going to give you one more example, because the people of Wisconsin, the progressive movement in America, by the way, began in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is changing. They've obviously gotten tired of this progressivism, and they've been showing that now for years, by the way. So when Scott Walker got elected governor, okay, if anybody remembers, he was going. What was he doing? Something that Joe and I say all the time needs to be done. He was going after the teachers' unions because the teachers' unions were busting the state budget. And they knew they were going to lose. They knew they were going to lose because he had the support of the state Senate, the state legislature, and obviously he was the one that pushing this. What did they do? They went to Illinois. They never showed up that day for the vote. All the Democrats left the state. All the Democrats in the state house, they left the state and they went to Illinois and they stayed there. In other words, and the bottom line is they were right.
Bye.
But my point is, they know that they're losing. Particularly on abortion. Let's keep it with abortion for a second. They know they're losing. They've lost. I talked to a good friend of mine who's in the literal front line of the pro-life movement. Okay, and I talked to him down at Planned Parenthood of Greater New York when I see him first Saturday of every month. All right, because that's when they do the procession. And we were having a conversation. They've lost every argument. Joe was talking about science. We did a story last year, okay, where for his PhD, one of the University of Chicago, I forgot his name, the student did a survey of all the world's biologists, and whether they were pro-choice or pro-life didn't matter, because
life began.
When human life begins. That was the question. He got a few crocs and said, what is this Christian pro-life stuff? He didn't mention anything about pro-life, pro-choice. He just said, as a biologist, when does life begin? Over 90% of the world, 92% of the world's biologists agree that human life begins at conception. All human beings were conceived at the same time, at the moment of conception. You, me, Joe, all of us.
It took 10 years for his research to get approved.
Right, because they didn't want to approve it because, it busted a hole in their narrative. So the biology, they lose the scientific argument, okay? They certainly lose the moral argument. They have no moral argument because, again, calling evil good and good evil, you can't call abortion good.
See, but
the best you could do is call it neutral.
We lose the moral argument because we support them. You see, this is, again, where our population is lost. Abortion is a disqualifier, just like slavery is a disqualifier. Keep in mind, everything the Nazis did was legal. It was legal to kill Jews in Nazi Germany. It was legal.
Well, that's why when you watch TV shows and in the characters' mouths, like if it's something to do with abortion, it is legal. What does that mean? Like Joe just said, that
slavery was legal. We all know that was wrong.
Good old-fashioned Jew hatred, okay, was legal.
It was legal
in Germany.
And this is, I'm telling you right now, history will look at us poorly on this.
That's right.
I'm telling you this right now. This is a disqualifier, and a moral society would see it that way.
Well, you use the word see. You use the word see.
Bingo.
How blind are these people that when you try to tell them, do you know that when you say that, well, abortion is legal because Harry Blackmun said so, and you say, well, discrimination against Jews in Nazi Germany was decided on by judges in Germany, basically just saying whatever they wanted the law to be. But Harry Blackmun was a puppet too. Well, just because Harry Blackmun wasn't a puppet, just because William Brennan wasn't a puppet, just because Thurgood Marshall, let's say, were puppets of the regime, okay, but they're no better than the Nazi judges.
Well,
better whatsoever.
Speaking of puppets, and I don't even know if Joe knows this because this came out Friday after we did our lineup for the show. A judge on the second day of this law going into effect suspended it.
Right. See what you get?
Her name is Mary Geiger Lewis.
Let me guess. Obama appointee.
She put a 14-day temporary restraining order on the law after 2 days, and will renew it until she can hold a more substantial hearing on March 9th. And get this, on Planned Parenthood's request that it not be enforced until the group's lawsuit against South Carolina is resolved. Now, here's the deal. This is why I bring this up. One, because it's sad. And secondly, this was passed through the legislative process in a state. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It went through the bodies of government and it was signed, it was voted upon, and it was signed into the law by the governor, which means these are the representatives of the people. The people are speaking. Okay? Now she is usurping the voice of the people.
Right.
This is what you call an activist judge.
Now, real quick, remember, we're going to bring it up again because remember, liberal California, okay, about 10 years ago now, 8 or 10 years ago, they voted against gay marriage. The people of California voted against gay marriage. A judge in that case did the exact same thing. And that wasn't the legislature in California. That was a direct referendum. And a judge said, well, I guess we don't like democracy too much. And boom. And then it ended up going to the Supreme Court. This judge is hoping, at the behest of Planned Parenthood, who has way too much power in this country, something's got to be done to take their power away. They have way too much power, way too much influence. Okay. They just want this case. Again, I don't know. You would think they want this case to go to the Supreme Court or hope that it gets that far where maybe a John Roberts turns around and says, no, we're not going to hear any abortion cases. But if it gets in front of the Supreme Court, guess what? We don't need John Roberts. Let's hope Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, you know that Alito and Thomas are solid as a rock. Okay. Let's hope the 5 conservatives maybe start to pull back the power that Planned Parenthood has in this country by pulling back this so-called unlimited right to abortion. But in this story, remember something. The Democrats have lost every argument, moral argument, legal argument, scientific argument, philosophical argument. They can't make one. So now it's a matter of pure political will. This judge that Joe's pointing out is part of that political will. I know she's in the judiciary, but is part of that political will. Okay, so they get people who are willing to just keep this thing legal to the moment of birth, funded by taxpayers, the whole 9 yards. Again, because they think it's a good thing.
And she's not elected.
Good.
You see, this is the important. This is where I got news for you. We've said it on our show, on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online. And we're going to say, we don't live in a democracy. She's not an elected official. She has no right to do this.
Right.
Zero.
But she's getting away with it.
And this is what we have right now in this country.
Fortunata's in the chat room, Joe. I want you to answer Fortunata because I know what you're going to answer. He says, how can we counteract the evil in the world right now? What are we doing?
The
on
rosary.
Saturday? The rosary.
The rosary.
A lot of people
pray the rosary.
A lot of people, I'm sorry. Joe and I have lost, we've gained a significant audience over the last year and a half. We know we've lost some of our political audience because we've become, naturally, we didn't decide to do this, okay? But it's unavoidable that if you get into all these stories that we've been doing now for the last 2 years, if you look at all this nonsense that's out there, which we do so we could bring these stories to you, okay? You start to see you cannot separate politics and culture from the spiritual battle. We have to talk about religion. We have to talk about the spiritual battle. And all of this it falls under the spiritual battle. And we know we've lost some, let's say, people who want to hear the political solutions, right? People who think that Donald Trump's going to be president on March 4th. There's still people that think Donald Trump's going to be president.
That's absurd.
Like Steve Bannon said, stop sucking your thumb. That's it. Biden's president, and now we have to deal with it. Fortunata Pedro asked in the chat room, what do we do about it? The first thing we do is clean up our own spiritual lives. What? Become saints? I'm not a saint. I'm a sinner. But I'm still going to go to confession. I'm going to pray the rosary, and I'm going to try to be a saint. And I'm going to go and I'm going to receive the Eucharist as I did today. And I'm going to get out in the battle. The first thing to do, Fortunata, is pray. The first thing to do, put on your armor. Again, going back to real quick, Joe, going back to St. Paul, Ephesians 6, put on the whole armor of God. He said that after he said that we're fighting against spiritual wickedness in high places. What is the armor of God? Everything we talk about. Prayer, penance, Eucharist. That's the armor of God.
Fortunato says we need to strengthen our faith. Begin with confession. I'm telling you, confession is the beginning. What did John the Baptist say? The precursor to Christ, who Christ said he's the greatest man that was ever born of a woman. Ever. Repent and believe in the gospel. You see, the beginning of conversion is the beginning of repentance. You have to say, I'm sorry. That's how it starts. You have to say that I'm not God and you are, and I'm going to listen to you.
That's right.
That's how it begins. And then the goal is to stay on the road. Stay on the road. How do you stay on the road? You pray the rosary every day. It takes 20 minutes of your day. Our Lady asked us to do that at Fatima. How else do you stay on the road? You go to church once a week. How else do you stay on the road? Go to confession every month. If you do those 3 things that I just said, costs nothing, minimum amount of time, confession takes 5 minutes, and if you murdered somebody, it takes 20. 5 minutes, you're in and out. Priest does not beat you over the head. It's an act of humility, and frankly, you receive a tremendous amount of grace and you feel good after you walk out the door.
Our priest said that about you today because Joe always says that on the show. And our priest, FSSP priest at our parish, Fraternity St. Peter, great homily. I love going there because they give their homilies are spot on. And what we need to hear, he said what you just said. Go to confess. He was talking about Lent, all right, in particular. But he's like, go to confession. He goes, even if you don't have a serious grievous sin to confess, go to confession. He basically was saying, confess your venial sins, okay, because of the grace. Why
Absolutely.
would you, if somebody's handing you, okay, $100,000 and putting it on the table, okay, and says, that's a free gift, Okay. I'm giving it to you. Okay. Because you did something. In this case, we're talking about going to confession, but I'm just using an example. You wouldn't leave the 100,000 on the table. You would say, you know what? I'll come back and get it next month. Well, why wouldn't you take it now? Can it do you some good now? Doesn't grace, not equating grace with money, but doesn't grace, which has infinite value. Okay. Why would you leave it on the table? Even if you have venal sins, go to confession once a month. If you've fallen short in a number of ways that you know are not mortal sins,
we fall short every day.
You remember them, you examine your conscience, go to confession, as Joe said, and it doesn't take very long. And it doesn't matter even if it does, but it doesn't take very long. And get the grace that Christ wants to give you. We're talking in this episode today, in this conversation, about calling evil good and good evil. Well, one of the things we have to do is not let them confuse us. And again, remember, the devil is smarter than us. He's much smarter than us. We don't get prideful. We could be confused. Jesus said, do not be deceived, which means you could be deceived. And he said that to his apostles. Okay.
And they were.
So they were.
They ran.
Don't get it through your head. We can all be deceived. Why not get the grace that will protect us against that deception?
And also,
because we need it.
What confession does, if you go once a month, and by the way, this is the recommendation of Padre Pio, John Paul II, and Fulton J. Sheen. These are not my recommendations. These are very holy men, two of which are canonized saints, and one's going to be a canonized saint, Fulton Sheen, soon. Mark my words. What happens when you go to confession is even your venial sins, we're all looking to grow in virtue. That's the idea of getting into heaven. You have to be a virtuous person. In fact, heroic virtue gets you into heaven. And by the way, if you're not there, you're going to spend a lot of time in purgatory. These are not my words. These are God's. No one gets in until they're perfect. So do your time now. Andrew Apostoli told me that in confession. He scared the hell out of me, actually. I went to confession many years ago with him in Yonkers. He scared the living hell out of me.
Well, good. You're supposed to get the hell scared out of you. I just want to give a quick shout out before we move on to Disgraziad. Is that where we're going next?
We're going,
unfortunately. There's too many to mention. We love you all so much, okay? And so we don't want to basically do a biblical genealogy of all the names that are in the chat room. But just to say, we love you all and thank you all for supporting us. But Lisa's here. Lisa's here every week. KC Royals fan, Sean Marie. See you all the time. Barbara, good friend Barbara. Barbara was one of our first viewers.
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Thank you.
Barbara's up in Wisconsin. She went through that what we were talking about with Scott Walker. Barbara's in there. We love you to death, Barbara. Fortunata's in here. Just a whole bunch of great people are in here. Docs, Decock63 comes every week. And most of you do. And most of you have seen us. If you haven't, welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe. Please, if you like what we're talking about, okay, we're putting and trying to put what we're going through in the temporal realm into its proper context, which is the spiritual battle that we're fighting. We talk about Xavier Becerra. We talk about Joe Biden. We're about to talk about a guy who makes my skin crawl, but we're going to talk about Cuomo. Why? Because they represent those in this world who try to convince you that what is evil is actually good. And we're trying to tell you, okay, and it's the best we can, because it's what we do, okay? We're not preaching at you, to get that grace that you need, because we all need to have 20/20 vision. Nothing needs to be blocking our vision. That means getting rid of our sins as frequently as we can. So having said that, if everybody out there knows I'm an angry guy, the guy who really gets me angry, all right, is Andrew Fat Tony Salerno Cuomo.
Well, we're going to start with an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. And it's funny, the author of this particular article, I know personally, interestingly enough. He sent me the article personally. His name is Kieran Morris, and his mom died of COVID last year. And he gives a little an account, and I think it's a very personal account. And we're going to break it down, and I think it'll spark an interesting conversation.
Can I lay a little groundwork?
Sure.
Keep this in mind now. Okay, Disgraziad Cuomo is under a tremendous amount of pressure now. Okay?
Oh, they're talking about impeaching him.
Right, and it's Democrats that are turning on him. Why? And I'm only bringing this up for this reason. When you think, somebody said earlier in the chat room, well, what are we going to do about it? Oh, Fortunata asked, well, what do we do now? We said pray the rosary, okay? But then what did we say? Then get ready and open your mouth. The reason why Disgraziad Cuomo is coming under so much fire is because people were fearless in opening their mouth. First person to do it was Janice Dean, God bless her, because her in-laws, both of them, died in nursing homes. And she's been shouting it. Now, she's got a platform, quite frankly. She's got a platform on Fox News. So she used it, and she brought this to light. Now, Kieran, this gentleman, wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal, and they published it. Now, keep that in mind when you see the power of simply opening your mouth. Because who we're going to get into it. Who's going against Cuomo? The people that you wouldn't think are going against him, because people open their mouths. Go ahead, Joe.
This is what he said. He said, my mother, Joan Morris, died of COVID-19, which she contracted at a Brooklyn nursing home. She arrived here January 24th. She came down with COVID since he gives a little breakdown of the dates. She came down with COVID symptoms the week of April 5th. She was sent to the hospital April 10th, was diagnosed with COVID April 11th, and she died April 17th. Last month, the state acknowledged that 12,743 people died of COVID, contracted in nursing homes because they were inexplicably put in harm's way by the admission of new residents who were COVID positive. My mother's death was entirely preventable. She had a treatable ailment, a broken vertebrae, along with a pre-existing condition, advanced emphysema, and she would be alive today for Andrew Cuomo's executive order that forced nursing homes to accept COVID patients, which he issued despite. This is the important part,
and I want you to keep this in your head. This is the guy that everybody calls the smartest guy in the room. He's so smart. Biden said he's the gold standard. Okay, well, if you're such a good manager, I guess governors are supposed to be managers, right?
Sure.
Managing a state, budgets, all this kind of stuff, workers, okay? If you're such a brilliant guy, well, how do you excuse what Joe is about to tell you?
Well, I'll tell you why, but I'll read it to you. Which he issued despite the availability of thousands of beds in the empty Javits Convention Center, the largely unused Central Park Field Hospital, and the underused federal hospital ship USNS Comfort,
which was sitting in the Hudson River
in April
when
his mom died.
All right, when Kieran's mom died, okay, and Cuomo, who's the brilliant manager, brilliant governor, won an Emmy Award, wrote a book. Everybody said, well, Cuomo, that's the way to do it, okay? You had all this space, and you made the decision to send these people, these COVID-positive people, into nursing homes. Rather than take the people in the nursing homes out and sending them to the Javits Center, okay, and keeping them safe, you kept them there, and you sent in COVID-positive people while those old people were in there. And then you're going to tell me that you're so brilliant? Go ahead, Joe.
According to media reports, Mr. Cuomo and Health Commissioner Howard Zucker then undercounted and concealed and suppressed the nursing home death toll.
That should be a crime. If there isn't, Joe's going to get into it. There is an investigation going on. He should be charged criminally, and he shouldn't just not be allowed to be governor, so that Kamala Harris, when Biden is shown the door, could choose him as the vice president. Okay? No. His future is over in politics because of this, and he needs to be wearing an orange jumpsuit. What he did, his decisions, okay? Call it criminally negligent homicide. I learned that from Law and Order, okay? You messed up and people died. You need to be wearing an orange jumpsuit, fat Tony Salerno Cuomo.
So Kieran goes on. He said, my mother shouldn't be a mere statistic on a dubious government chart. Unless there is a meaningful accountability, the people Mr. Cuomo once called the most precious in our community will have died in vain. Families deserve to know the truth. State and federal prosecutors should open an investigation to determine if Mr. Cuomo's executive response to COVID-19 was criminally negligible.
I just said that.
And Kieran's a lawyer, just so you know, too. Or a violation of laws against elderly abuse. Certainly, it was an unprecedented public policy disaster. Now, why did he not? You talk about being blind to good because of evil. Why did he allow COVID-positive patients to go back into the nursing homes? Well, one could say he had nowhere else to put them, but that's not true.
It's not true.
He could have put them into the Javits Center. He could have put them on the boat. He could have put them in a field hospital.
Did you ever go
Why
to the
didn't
Center?
he? Oh, it's
You ever,
huge.
it's enormous. You ever go to a car show?
It's huge.
It's an enormous building.
Why didn't he do it? Now, I don't know his heart, but I'm going to basically make an educated guess because Donald Trump set those up.
Right.
That's why.
Right.
And he did not want to give him a win. That's my thought. And if I'm wrong, God forgive me.
Kat's in the chat room. She said, this is what happens when we persist in a sin like abortion. We no longer see the sanctity of life for anyone. Kat, spot on. Listen, we're making disgraziad fat Tony Salerno Cuomo, okay, one of our main targets in this show because he's just one act of evil and one disaster after another. Kat, remember something. This is the guy who championed, again, we're calling this show, calling evil good and good evil. They applauded when he signed the legislation that says that a non-doctor, don't have to be a doctor to perform an abortion, all right? Child murder.
That's absurd.
In New York. Don't have to be a doctor, doesn't have to be in a hospital.
Up to the day before you're born.
Up to the day you are born. Okay, the day you're scheduled to be born.
You're going to have a nurse practitioner dig into a woman's body.
Because no bureaucrat,
crazy?
no politician, he said it just like this, just like a real gangster, because no bureaucrat, no governor, no politician is going to get in the way of a woman's right to choose. This is what he said. This is the way it was. And they went like this. They started applauding. He sent women in New York into back alleys. Because if you don't have to be a doctor and you don't have to be
that's
a hospital,
that's
a back alley abortion.
You might as well be in the back of a bar.
How about when a woman's in the 8th month of pregnancy?
That's absurd.
It's absurd is right. So remember, Kat, this is an example of what we're talking about. The guy is completely blind. Why? Because it starts with his own sin.
And who's also blind?
Acknowledged.
The people who voted for him.
Right.
You see, this is, again, it's a disqualifier, people. I say this time and time again. How can you support this? And you know something? This is where, listen, you may have hated Donald Trump and you may have said, I can't vote for him. Okay, then how could you vote for this?
Right. What did Trump
How could you vote
like
for this?
Right.
I'm sorry. You should have wrote someone else in. You should have wrote someone else in because this is disgusting. This is disgusting.
And then what he wants to do is then he wants to get gangster on you. That's why we call him Fat Tony Salerno Cuomo, okay? Because he wants to get gangster on you. What he said a few weeks ago when he started to just get criticism before an investigation was launched where he was getting criticism, he borrowed a line from Mike Tyson. He goes, well, everybody's got an opinion until I punch him in the face. Gangster. Also, his administration, they fought a Freedom of Information lawsuit. How do you fight a Freedom of Information lawsuit, by the way? We have a Freedom of Information Act in this country. If I want information, I file and I get it. It's pretty simple. All right. Joe and Joe should start doing that soon. We should start filing FOIA requests. But anyway, the administration also fought a Freedom of Information lawsuit filed by the Empire Center for Public Policy. Cuomo's top aide, Melissa DeRosa, privately admitted to Democrat lawmakers that the administration withheld the data over fears it would be used against us by federal prosecutors. So he wants to go full gangster. Then he wants to sick his dogs out there like one of his boys here. Oh, Rich Azzopardi. If Cuomo's the boss, Azzopardi's like the underboss. Okay, he's like the
Did they grow up together in Queens?
Probably. It's like Cuomo's the Don, and Azzopardi would be like the capo regime. He would be like Clemenza. He would be like that fat Clemenza, okay, or Tessio in The Godfather. So that's what Azzopardi would be. He sicks the dogs on you. Well, guess what? Gangster's losing. Gangster fat Tony Salerno Cuomo is losing.
Baldwin is turning on him.
Alec
Baldwin said he should resign. How's that grab you?
Right. So you see what's happening. Again, why is it happening? Because of what Joe and I talk about on the show. I had somebody say to me one time, this is like a year ago, because I was saying, they were asking me what we do, and we were having a conversation about it. I said, our goal is to always tell the truth. And the person actually got a little kind of like impatient. What do you mean tell the truth? What does that mean? Tell the truth. I said, you see something for what it is. Okay. You see the lies that are out there. You expose those lies, and then you counter those lies with the truth. That's called speaking the truth. So, and if somebody wants to counter you and say, well, you're not telling the truth, they're going to have to argue with you. But that's what you do. You tell the truth. Why is the house that Andrew Cuomo built he built his house on sand, okay? Why is it falling apart? Because the light of truth is being shown on not only his administration, but how he is as a person.
De Blasio, well, they hate each other.
Well, they hate each other.
Blasio's calling for his
Tell everybody about the guy Kim.
Now
this is important because
this is good.
Again, this is not right-wing conservative Joe and Joe look at putting pressure on Cuomo. Okay, good. Joe's going to tell you who is.
A New York Assemblyman, Ron Kim, he's a Queens Democrat, said Andrew Cuomo threatened his career over the ongoing nursing home scandal, rocking the administration, warning that he could, this is what Cuomo said to Kim, that he would destroy Kim if he did not fall in line and vigorously defend officials involved in the fallout. Kim, who has publicly accused Cuomo of lying about key aspects of the nursing home cover-up, told CNN that the Democratic governor called him directly and threatened his career. You see, this is a mess. I'll be honest with you. I don't think he's going to get impeached. I don't think he's going to resign, but he's finished.
I think he's
finished.
Never to be known is in the chat room. He says they are always painting good people as evil separatists. Right, because they have to demonize those who are good. Okay, the evil ones call themselves good. Okay, and they maintain their positions and their income and their status and everything else. But you're evil, so you're going to have to go to the poorhouse. But he said, but they're afraid of revival, yeah, and unity, yeah, and even more afraid of open discussion. Listen, never to be known. They cannot have an open and honest debate. What has debate become in America? A 5-minute clip on CNN, a 5-minute clip on Fox News, where somebody says something, the conservative says one thing, the liberal shouts, the conservative shouts, and then Sean Hannity says, oh, we got to go to a break. That's debate in America. And the left will have that. They'll take that and they'll say, well, we debate on cable news. We go into debates on Sean Hannity. No, you don't. That's not debate. A debate is what they do at the Oxford Union in England, where they actually still have debates where you speak and you're not interrupted. And if somebody tries to interrupt you from the other side, you have the right to say, not yet. Okay. In other words, it's a gentleman's debate. Okay, is what it is. So they still have open and honest debates in England, which are very entertaining and very enlightening. And you see both sides of an issue. In America, we're dealing with bullies, because that's what Disgraziad Cuomo is. That's what Asa Party is. That's what all these people are. They don't want debate. They want to bully you into shutting your mouth, because in an open and honest debate,
they lose.
They lose bad, because even if you're not going to convince them, if there's an audience of 1 million people watching that debate, they're going to lose 95% of those people.
And remember this,
because they lie.
The truth can stand up against the world. It did with Jesus Christ. It did with Joan of Arc. It did with many, many, many saints. It did with Martin Luther King.
Let me give you a quick example. You'll love this. There's a great debate from a few years ago when he was alive. I will say, God rest his soul. Okay, I don't wish any human being to be in hell. Nobody. Okay, so when I say Christopher Hitchens' name, I say God rest his soul, and may God have mercy on his soul. Christopher Hitchens was in a debate with John Lennox. Okay. Now, John Lennox is Protestant, okay, but he's very good at debating atheists, okay? He's like the C.S. Lewis of our time. He actually knew C.S. Lewis, all right, which makes him old as dirt, all right? But it was a classic scholarly debate in front of a whole auditorium, thousands of people. And in the beginning, they wanted like a show of hands about how neutral the audience was, okay? And it was a neutral audience. Some people came in unsure, and they were debating the existence of God. They were debating the existence of God. When it was over, and I will give Christopher Hitchens credit, because he was willing to debate people. Okay, he was not a coward. He was willing to debate people. Okay, when it was over, they did the same poll. In other words, by let's say by applause, who won the debate? John Lennox won, hands down. Everybody knows it. Even the moderator said, well, I guess we know who won that debate. And they had the camera on Hitchens basically making a face like, yeah, I guess he got the better of me in the debate. My only reason I bring it up is if you have open and honest debates like that, truth is going to win out. Okay. But in America, it's not going to happen because the people who are evil or who have chosen evil, they're not going to let you debate. They're going to shut you down. Look at big tech, Joe. Look at big tech. They'll shut us down sooner or later.
Oh, we're gone.
We're gone. Either that or they're going to put our heads in the
with you.
guillotine. Everything is, but look at what they don't want: open and honest debate. They don't even want ideas floating out there in the ether. They're dangerous because they're true. See, evil is called evil. Good, which is the truth. The true and the good is the same. True, good, and beautiful. Okay, those ideas which are good and true are called evil by YouTube and Facebook and Google and the rest. Therefore, they need to be silenced. So we don't really have debate in this country. And disgraziad Cuomo, he's the last one that's going to want debate.
Well, let's stick with New York because I thought this was interesting, and it just shows this is the bad fruit of bad policies. And I want to remind all you people of this because sadly the mainstream press does not. A New York subway worker and workers, the MTA, they're calling for protection amid upticks in violence in the subway. After a violent few weeks in the Big Apple, transit officials are sounding the alarm yet again. While New York authorities are now moving to ramp up security on subways, transit workers have said it's long overdue. The recent spike in violence has MTA employees on high alert, but they're pointing the blame on city officials by ignoring previous calls for the city to take action. Their disdain comes after 2 riders were murdered when a homeless man went on a 14-hour stabbing spree. The suspect was apprehended for stabbing 4 people in separate incidents occurring on the A train, which left 2 dead and 2 with serious injuries. There have been more than a dozen attacks on subways in the last 2 weeks. Some subway operators have stressed that drug dealers and con artists are overtaking the stations. According to the MTA, ridership is down a whopping 70% on subways and at least 50% on buses.
Tom's in the chat room. He said broken window theory. Tom, I agree with you. But it started with doing away with the broken window theory, where, let's say, for argument's sake, you would stop the vagrants from the squeegee guys, and then you find out that they got criminal records or they have a warrant out for them. So I agree with you, Tom. That was the first step in dismantling what Giuliani did. Okay. But the next step in what we're talking about in this show, and I think you'll agree, is it's the wild, wild west, brother. No, you can do anything now. Can I tell you a story?
Sure. Go.
I'm talking to a friend of mine. I love the people I work with. Okay. They're all friends of mine. That's one of the reasons why I really like my job, because the people I work with are my friends. So one of my friends, she's a short Spanish girl, right? 20-something-year-old, probably early 30s. Okay. Now she was taking the subway to the second to last stop in the Bronx. Okay. So, but
That's
she took it's a haul. Yes. So, and she was going all the way up. So now here's the thing. I was talking to her the other day, and I said, "How are you doing with everything on the subway?" She goes, "I started to drive in." All right. And she's a cocktail waitress, right? She's like, "I started to drive in," and I said, "Why? What did something?" She goes, "Oh, I didn't tell you what happened." I said, "No, what happened?" So she's on the subway. Okay. Now in the older subways, they have 2-seaters. Okay. So they have the long rows of seats, and then you have 2-seaters. She's sitting in the inside seat. She notices a guy staring at her. Okay. There are other people in the subway car. She's there. She's got about 1 or 2 stops left. And she said the guy comes over, starts rambling, saying, "I'm dying of cancer. I don't have long to live, so I want to take you back to my place." And like saying all this filthy stuff, and started stroking her hair on the subway. She was mortified, didn't know what to do because she didn't want to, she's a pretty smart kid, right? She's like street smart kid. She's like, I didn't want to do anything sudden or anything because I didn't know where this guy was going. Soon as the train stopped in the next station, she goes, boom. She goes, I was right out the door, right? But could you imagine, Tom, I'm bringing this up because like what we're talking about. Can you imagine sitting on a subway and somebody coming up, number one, sitting right next to you when there's many other seats, starting to stroke your hair? You're a woman? We're all now again, forget about guys like us if we were on the subway. You're a woman and others, and under the Blasio regime, under his regime, nothing will ever happen to that guy.
And that never happened a year ago.
Right.
You see, this is why I bring this up. This is what you did to New York City. Blame de Blasio, blame the woke, defund the police nonsense. This didn't happen for, by the way, close to 3 decades. And guess who started that? Giuliani. with the broken window theory.
Right.
You prosecute the smallest crimes first, and it works its way up to the top. New York turned into Disneyland. And a lot of us who are from this area remember New York in the 70s and the 80s was the Wild Wild West, and it's back.
Yeah.
And it's because of what you did to the greatest police force in the United States.
Or in the world.
You dismantled it. You also tied their hands behind their back. And a lot of those guys are probably worried about their pensions.
Yep.
And they're not going to get involved.
Well, why would
Let's
you?
be real.
Why would you? And by the way, Mark's in the chat room. He's been very excited. I just got to say, Mark said, John Gotti wannabe, LOL. Yeah, Cuomo. That's exactly what he is. All right. He pretends to be a governor, and I'm educated. I went to the Ivy League. In the meantime, he's a half a gangster. He's not even a full-blown gangster. He's a half a gangster. But exactly right. They've gotten what they wanted. And who suffers most?
The people.
Everybody knows the answer. The rich people? You think the rich people are
They're
going
not
to
taking
suffer?
a subway.
You live on the 23rd floor on the Upper West Side in one of those buildings. In other words, in an $8 million condo. You know what you have? You have security. You don't take the subway. You don't take a cab. You don't drive your car. You take a private car to go to a restaurant, whatever the case may be. You don't walk around on the street. Okay. You get back in the car and you go home after your $500 meal. Okay. And I don't begrudge you for it, but it ain't the rich that suffer without cops on the street. It's all the kids that they claim to worry about. It's all the black kids. And this girl, my friend, she's Spanish. She's Hispanic. Okay. No, these are the people that get hurt. She's riding up to the Bronx. When this happens in the Bronx, who's getting hurt? It ain't guys with complexions like ours. Okay. It's black and brown people and immigrants who are getting hurt.
Who have no choice but to take the subway because they can't take a cab or a black car because they don't have the money.
Right.
Or don't have a car. You see, this is where they're full of crap. And they say they're for the poor. No, you're not. No, you're not. You don't connect the dots. Why? Because it goes back to our title. You're blind.
Right.
You're calling evil good and good evil. You're blind. You're not connecting the dots. This did not happen a year ago. It didn't. Now it does.
Well, it has been a process. Okay. It started with Bloomberg because he caved on the what was it? The stop and frisk. Okay. Again, caving. Every time somebody uses the word racist, we need to start fighting. I don't know how we could do it.
At first, he was strong on
well,
it.
At first, but then he caved because everybody called it racist. Stop and frisk was not racist. Stop and frisk saved lives. Okay. Prevented crime. Stop and frisk was a good thing. But it seems like every time the left wants to point the finger and say that's a racist statement, when you say you support stop and frisk, you got to say, you know what? I don't really care what you say. I'm going to keep moving forward, and I want to keep stop and frisk in place.
When I go through, what's it called? Because I work downtown. I've been working from home for the past year. But when I would go through the Oculus, they would have police that would randomly search your bag. I have nothing in my bag.
Right.
You want to go through it? Go through it.
Right.
Fine. It's fine. If you have nothing, listen to me. If you have nothing hidden in your life, you want to go through my bag. I'm not insulted that you chose me. Go for it. Look, you're keeping me safe, and I want to be safe, and I know you're keeping me safe. And by the way, they do it in a respectful manner. Can I see your bag? Absolutely, sir. Take a look. Okay, you're good. Keep moving. Love it.
I used to take the train.
I'm all about it.
I used to take the train with a kid when I was living in Brooklyn. And after I first got married, before I moved back to Jersey and brought my wife to Jersey, we were living in Brooklyn. I was taking the train from where we were to Midtown, okay, because I was working in Midtown. Now, a friend of mine who was a little crazy, he liked to smoke a little bit too much pot. So he went into the middle of the cars to just say, we were taking the subway together, and we worked together. He was relieving himself. Let me just put it like that to you, okay, in the middle of the cars, okay. But he didn't realize because he was high, that we were about to pull into the station. And you know who was there? 2 cops. And you know what happened when we got off at that stop? He got arrested. He got arrested. Now, I don't even want to tell you what. Now, again, I'm not excusing doing something like that, okay? It's not appropriate, okay? But he got arrested for that. That's about 7 years ago, okay? And he got arrested for it. Nowadays, I don't even want to tell you what you could do on the subway, and there ain't a cop to be found. There ain't a cop to be found at all.
And that's the bad fruit of bad policies. Your ideas. Forget about the people involved. Your ideas are bad. Your ideas are bad. And people's minds have been clouded. And they voted for this crap. And our country's worse for it. It's worse for it. I'm sorry. The mainstream media doesn't cover a lot of this stuff. We do. but we're not lying. And this is a bad idea. And people don't connect the dots, and they believe lies. And frankly, to be honest with you, they believe lies because they rationalize their own sin.
That's right.
That's the truth.
You have to feel good. Remember something, the natural law and your conscience work to convict you because you already know when you've done something that's incredibly evil. Take abortion. A woman who has had an abortion does not need me or Joe or the Catholic Church to tell her that what she's done is wrong. But once you do it and you need to justify it, you don't want to confess it. You think what you did was good because Planned Parenthood tells you it's good. Disgraziad Cuomo tells you it's good. The culture tells you it's good. You need to then start to convince yourself that it's good. But like anything else that you think is good, if you have something good, we have the Catholic faith. What do you want to do with that faith? You want to share it, don't you? You want to share it with other people.
Because that's freedom.
But that's truly a good thing. But when you think that abortion, okay, or let's just say sexual liberation in general is a good thing, you really think that you need to promote that to other people. I need to share with you.
Misery loves company.
Well, that I was going to say too. But you share it as a good thing. But you realize that what you're doing is what Joe just said. It's because you want other people to be as miserable as you. You don't want to think what you did in your mind or how you're living your life is not good. So you try to adapt the world to fit you. And then what's the consequence? What the name of the show is. Evil then becomes good and good becomes evil. So your abortion became a good thing. And then you try to convince others that it's a good thing. That's one of the roots of our problems. Would you agree?
Oh, I would. And I'll be honest with you. It comes down to this once again. It's bending the knee to God. In order to see, we must be humble. You know, it has nothing to do with intelligence. It has everything to do with humility. It's acknowledging that God is God and I am not. Go to confession. You will feel better. And you will soon see. How do you stay on the road? Pray the rosary every day. Go to church every week. Receive the sacrament in a state of grace. And go to confession every month. You take a shower every day, right? Why? Because you want to be clean. Why wouldn't you want to clean your soul? You'll feel better. Why don't you do it? We don't do it because we don't want to change. We don't do it because our pride prevents us from doing it. It costs nothing, and it's the best thing you can do for yourself. It's Lent. Why don't you do it?
That's right. That's right. And I just want to get an email up real quick for everybody because I want to. So Frontline with Joe and Joe at gmail.com. That's our Gmail address. Okay. So not the Frontline. Frontline with Joe and Joe. One word at gmail.com. Why am I giving you that? One of the ways we could start to get ourselves into into the mode of fighting the spiritual battle is something that Joe spearheaded that we started doing last month. We're going to continue to do it the first Saturday of every month. Men's Rosary. No offense, ladies. This one's for the men. This country needs some masculinity, some authentic masculinity, ladies. So give us this one, okay? Men standing in front of their parish. Get the okay of your pastor, okay, or whoever's in charge of that at your parish. Invite men in your parish and in the neighborhood to pray the rosary every Saturday, every first Saturday of the month. Take you about 15 minutes, pray the joyful mysteries, okay? Get the approval of your priest, okay? And start to promote that in your parish, in your neighborhood. Do it on the sidewalk in front of your church so that other men from the neighborhood who might be Catholic but not practicing but need a little encouragement will be encouraged, okay? Because we met with a gentleman yesterday who came to our last one. Okay, it was wildly successful. We expected 3 guys to be there, and instead 15 guys showed up. Okay, so now we're gonna go from a couple of different parishes. We're gonna spread the word through email and on social media. All right, and we're gonna start a real men's rosary revival in America. Okay, I'm sorry, Joe. So Frontline with Joe and Joe at gmail.com, and let us know if you're gonna do it in your parish, and let us know how it goes. Okay. Also, if you like, again, I'm giving you our email. If you find a story you'd like for us to talk about, again, we get a lot of ideas from a lot of different places. If you have a story you want us to talk about or you want to make a comment, whatever the case might be, use the email. Use the Gmail ID at Frontline with Joe and Joe at gmail.com. But the men's rosary is a great way to get started. It's a great witness. It shows the culture. We're here to fight you. We're here to fight. And by the way, I'm not fighting you. I'm bringing God into the equation, okay? Because then I know you're going to lose. See, the problem is men want to fight, but they don't want to bring God in. That's why they lose. Politicians, conservative politicians, want to find political solutions to problems, for which the only solution is God, okay? So let's get that through our heads. Let's start Men's Rosary Revival in America.
And let us know.
Let us know in the Gmail, Frontline with Joe and Joe @gmail.com. Please, wherever you're seeing this show, like, subscribe, and share, and do all that fun stuff. And if you'd like to contribute a few bucks, we are on Patreon, patreon.com/the Frontline with Joe and Joe. You'll see our two ugly mugs there, and you could do $5, $20, $50, or $99 and become a subscriber to our channel. And that would be great if you have some want to do that to support our show. We are never going to beat you over the head with it, but we will mention that if you do want to throw in a few bucks every month, you could go there. Having said all that, any final thoughts, Joe?
No, but just like I said, a lot of these things, they're simple. They're simple solutions to complex problems. God chose common men. He didn't choose academics. He chose common men, and common women followed him too. It's very simple. Utilize what the church gives you. It doesn't cost nothing. It doesn't cost nothing. Lent is a good time to start.
Yep.
Start, and we will see the change that we desire. I'm telling you, if you give God an inch, he'll give you a yard.
That's right. And that's a great place to end the conversation. Let's stop looking to men. Let's stop looking to government. Let's start looking to God. Having said all that, until the next time, thank you for joining us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. And remember that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you guys